Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. We have part two of our Dynasty spoiler review. So should be part two because part one was almost an hour and a half. So
hmm
there's a lot of spoiled cards. Rob felt the need to also have some comments on some of the non-spoiled cards, whereas I won't be doing that. I will be mentioning it. We do have like the full set reveal, so if there are important points that kind of give context to the cards that we're talking about for the spoiler review, we will include that. When we were doing kind of research and notes and like playing around with them, we did have those cards available. With that, I guess we're going to start off exactly so we're going to pick up where we left off
hmm
with Assassin, right? So
Yeah.
this is the new class. It was I think James said that it was ready by Arc, but they didn't put it in there because it was a bit of a menace to Limited, which is reasonable. Like all the effects in Arcane Rising cared about your own banish from the top, right?
hmm
Boost for dash, Azalea ability, Kano ability. So it's really like kind of heavy on the deck manipulation for your own deck, right? So Arachne comes in here. It's a very interesting hero because we haven't introduced a mill based hero to Fab. It's something that exists in other card games. Of course, it is a little bit different because Fab, when you run out of cards in the deck, you don't just lose like you do with Magic. Um, so it's a little bit different as far as you fatigue. They run out of cards, but they can still kind of splash around like the Magic
Yeah.
cards splash
It's like a
around.
little different, but
Or
but they're pretty much dead.
yeah, you like flail. Like when you run out of
Yeah.
TM, when you run out of your TMs of Pokemon, you're just flailing. It's
Exactly.
pretty funny.
That's what happens.
So the ability itself for Arachne means that just by playing the contract, you can essentially scry your opponent, right?
hmm
So opt your opponent, whatever you want to call it. It's guarantees a certain banish for a card you're playing, or just get like a power card to the bottom, even if you can't immediately banish it, right? So if you see an Artibor on top and you're versing Fi, it doesn't matter if you're not playing Eradicate, which is the one that targets yellows. I would still probably put that card to the bottom because
Yeah.
then it guarantees they won't just be drawing that up to like shit on you the next turn, right? So it's kind of like a dual purpose, but it also gives you more confidence if you have multiple contract cards in your hand that targets different things, and one of them actually is covered by this. You can then keep it on top and play that card, right? So it gives you that option. The problem is that you'll already have played one card to use the Arachne ability, so you have to give that go again and to play the second contract card to
hmm
actually be able to like confirm it. So it
Right.
makes it a little awkward there, but it's still a nice ability because the card doesn't have to hit. The contract mechanic doesn't have to be like procced immediately; it just says whenever. So it means that you keep the chain open with go again or like a different action point source, like lead the charge or something. You can have multiple contracts proc on the same turn. So this is very impactful on your Eradicate turn, right? So Eradicate is the one that I'll cover a little bit later that lets you banish a whole lot of cards. So if you're like ending the chain on Eradicate after like one or two other contracts, for instance, and like Eradicate is the one you're buffing, you can still complete contracts as many times as you want for the other cards also. So you can potentially get like 4, 5, 6 plus silver, depending on how much your Eradicate hits for and how many cards you actually banish, which is quite nice. And that is really going to be like one of the main win cons for this deck. Raki doesn't seem to have like a particularly strong go wide damage potential just because he can only use assassin generic cards. None of his cards have any go again. You're gonna have to do something to them to actually be able to go wider. And I think the mid range and control style is going to be more optimal in general. I'm not particularly sure if the card pool is there yet for him to be like top tier right away. It kind of depends on the meta. I think
Yeah.
he does have a good amount of strengths, and a lot of his cards do have some good powerful effects. All of his cards block for 3, so I think he is going to be positioned fairly well in a lot of metas. I just don't know about specific matchups into things like hyper aggressive Fidex and things like that.
Yeah.
But he is a very interesting hero nonetheless, and he will be very fun to build. Um, so with that, we're going to move on to Spider's Bite, which is his weapon. So Spider's Bite is kind of like it's got like Kadachi vibes ish. It kind of like even though like
Yeah.
the fact that their one hand is kind of where they stop, like it is a dagger, for instance. It just gains to go again regardless of what you pitch. It does cost 2 apiece, right? So you can run both of them. You can run a one handed and like an arcane barrier. So there's a little bit of flexibility, like some anything that's generic essentially. On the other hand, it does come with piercing, which is like the new mechanic in Dynasty. And as you pay 2 for the 1 damage. It will gain the +1 if it's defended by equipment.
Yeah.
It's quite nice to prevent the opponent from using a 1 defense battle worn equipment. That's kind of like the main thing you would do. Like you like throw an iron rod or something like that in front of it to be able to like block 1 without having to use a card. So it means that like this card will still hit over a 1 armor equipment if they're not blocking or preventing anything else. And when it hits the hero, the next time to defend with 1 or more attack action this turn, the cards have -1 worth defending. So if you manage to have enough pitch and hit with both Spider's Bite, they do stack, right? So they'll have -2 when defending. So your 2 blocks are now 0. Your 3 blocks are now 1 for attack actions only. So it is a key point if your opponent has D-reacts, if they have armor, if they have non-attack actions, stuff like that. They still don't really do anything. But a lot of classes do have a decent amount of attack actions other than maybe like the wizard classes. It's an interesting weapon. I think you'll always probably swing once because I feel like Arachne is probably going to be heavier on the pitch for your curve because your blues are quite nice to be able to pay for those extra reactions like razors and such. So I think the curve is going to be higher than a red line deck, and that being said, Spider's Bite isn't going to be that hard to pay for because you could just essentially pitch a blue Spider's Bite and then play one of the 1 cost contracts, or you could have a 0 cost with 1 floating to like threaten an attack reaction, something like that. So I think Spider's Bite is pretty good to get like that nice chip damage in, which is a slower play style that I think Arachne is probably going for anyways. It seems fairly average into aggro, who's not blocking anyways, but pretty good into like the mid-range control, like Guardian decks, Warrior decks, even be like Dash decks. I think that the flexibility is quite nice, and it'll make some defending decks more inclined to like take more non-attack actions compared to attack actions. It's kind of like when you were playing against like Kasai and Bolton to avoid blocking with attack actions, because otherwise the sword will gain the buff, like Centauri Saber or Bolton Charge or both. It might incentivize that if this becomes a problem. I don't think it does. This feels like a fair card. This feels like a fair weapon. It doesn't seem broken in any kind of manner. It's just like something that you might want to play around. But in general, I think it's a nice weapon. Like I don't think it's particularly broken or anything like that.
Yep.
So, Spider's Bite. Let's finish off the equipment, shall we? Black Tech Whisperers. So this is the legendary booties, right? So Black Tech Whispers says essentially it's a 1 armor battle worn effect, and it's a legendary equipment that has an attack reaction attached to it where you destroy it to give go again on the when on a target assassin attack action when it hits, right? So it's not just like you're competing with this slot with Snapdragon Scalers, right? So it can also be brought back with 2 silvers, which is another effect that the headpiece also has. So it's the same kind of effect. If you have 2 silvers, you can bring it back from the graveyard. You could equip it essentially back from the graveyard here. And the budget boots here would be Snapdragons. Now, Snapdragon Scalers is what this is competing with essentially, because your assassin generic. I don't think you didn't get any like rare boots or common boots, right? For assassin in the class here. So that's what it's competing with. But Black Tech, you get really good value off the life recursion because as it gets a block every time you bring it back, it is battle worn. So for that, for that 2 silver, you're able to reoccur that attack reaction, which is pretty important because there are no native go again cards with the assassin kit here. So to be able to like do like a 0 cost contract into a 0 cost contract, if they like just take the first one because they don't want to reach the break point, you'll be able to like Black Tech to actually hit with the second one and threaten multiple silver, right? Because the chain won't have closed. It's just an attack reaction. So that's one of the ways where you can start stacking more silver and turning those silvers into reoccur your equipment. And it is also like it can be more reliable for things like Shred and Razor Reflex to guarantee the on hit to actually use Black Tech, but it's it allows for those bigger contract chances. And if you banish more than 1 card, it's also quite nice. Off of this, I think like this is probably the core leg piece compared to Snaps. I think the recursion will play more into the mid-range control style, like that armor, that 1 block armor, where you can probably get it back a couple times a game if you specifically need the Whisperers. And I think it's quite strong. I don't think it's like super broken at the moment. I think people will probably try to break this, but the fact that it's going to need 2 silvers means that on various decks, yeah, sure, if they don't block. It really depends on the speed. For the longer games, I think it's strong, but for short games, it's not a particularly great piece of armor for like a very short game. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out with this power level here. But I think like on looking at all the assassin cards and all the kind of related combos you can do, it doesn't seem like super overpowered at first glance here, and a little bit further details. So that is Black Tech Whisperers here. So Mask of Perdition is your second equipment. It is a majestic headpiece. So it is fighting with any of the other generic headpieces here. So, Crown of whatever, like any of the crowns other than Crown of Seeds. So Crown of Providence. I think the one that turns you royal. What's it called?
Ooh.
If
I can find it.
I don't remember.
got it
Arcanite
down
Spellcap. Cards like that. That's kind of what it's competing with. It is a
Crown of
It
Dominion.
has the same effect. Crown of Dominion. Yeah, so it has the same effect as far as the silver. So you pay 2 silver and you can get it back. It is the 1-block Battle Worn. The attack reaction here, though, is it lets you banish an additional card. So it gives you an additional chance to fulfill those contracts because you're milling more cards. It does come in for attack reaction again, so it doesn't break the chain or anything like that. And it's kind of important. Like I think it is the staple headpiece. I really don't think there's as many ways to replace this with like a static blocking like Crown of Providence or something like that, because I don't think that's Arachne's game plan as far as like control, like mid-range control mill style. Like I think this card actively targets your win condition, whereas getting more armor is just preventing you from losing, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
This equipment I think will. It's also the majestic slot. It's not as hard to get. I don't think there's that many other reasons to get other pieces of equipment there as your like main staple. So very good card. I think you'll want to block with these kinds of cards fairly early to maximize the 1-block value, so that when you actually use the attack reaction, you'll be able to like recur it and you get the full extra life. And so yeah, I like the card.
Yeah,
it's good card. It's just a nice majestic headpiece for the class.
Fits with the theme.
It is the theme here. So we're gonna head right into what I think is the core card. And by core, I mean like this card's gonna win you the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't see too many ways to really like do any quote unquote broken. I don't know if broken is really the word I want to use, but I don't see any like majorly high EV plays that like a Blood Rush Bellows or something like that. Whereas you're doing, I think Clay put it really nicely when we did the Reinhardt deck tech. He's like mainly doing fair things with one unfair card, Blood Rush, being able to break the game. Yeah. I think that's actually pretty reasonable here with Eradicate, as far as breaking the game to get to your win condition, right? Because it's not like it does crazy amounts of damage, but like killing your opponent really fast by combos isn't really the point. You just want to eat all their cards, because if you're able to eat multiple power cards in a turn, you just make their turns way less. So the tempo is not like trading damage. The tempo is like trading your deck, right? So it's like deck trading tempo, which is very interesting design space here. So Eradicate's the 1/4 yellow. I believe this was revealed by Red Zone Rogue. I think I watched that one. It's pretty good. So it's a 1/4 yellow that targets yellow cards.
Yeah,
you're probably not hitting the contract that often for this one. I don't think decks other than Prism ran that many yellow cards to begin with.
Right.
Pretty funny if you just like see Artivores. Like it's also pretty good here.
It's the main
It's definitely the card you play around. Core the deck by itself. You want to stack buffs like Cut to the Chase, Razor Reflex to maximize the banishing. So it is important that Shred will reduce their defense. It won't increase your attack, right? So Shred is fine, but it doesn't let you banish more than 4 cards. For instance, if you hit, like, if they block for 4 and a D-react, resolve it, and you shred it, or something like that, you'll still only want to do 4. Like, I think the way to break this is you want to do a combination. You want to get multiple buffs slash, I guess, I don't know, it shreds an attack reaction, but it's like a deflating reaction, right? Like you're reducing the defenses.
Right.
So you'll want to be stacking all of that to punish aggro decks or like mid-range decks that have like a card, like a hand they don't want to block with, like Dory that has like the glistening steelblade hands, kind of like they don't want to block with their power cards.
Yeah.
And so at best you play one of these as like the second or third contract card on the chain, and you're able to generate like a shit ton of silvers and get like guaranteed value off like reoccurring masks and stuff. And I think this is the one where like You're going to want to use black tech to hit if like one of your other contracts has a chance to hit. You're going to want to try to get 1 or 2 contract cards before Eradicate hits to be able to maximize that silver. And I think that's going to be like one of the major pieces you'll need to do. So it's definitely a staple, run 3 of it.
Yep.
And that's kind of it, right?
Important also to note that in the mirror, Eradicate targets Eradicate, which is nice.
Eradicate targets, or that's actually real funny in the mirror. Like if you hit all of their Eradicates, I think you just win the game. Like if you just like happen to Eradicate and it hits, and you like banish 6 cards and you hit like 2 of their Eradicates and they've used one already, you probably just GG out, right? Leave no witnesses. So this is the Bay of the set, right?
Right.
We had exude confidence. What did I say? The quote unquote I'd like her to step on me card of the set. Exude being the one from Monarch. They got the nice mat for Rhodes. Leave no witnesses. You do have to buy it from SEG.
Right.
I'd rather win it. It feels a little bit better. It is a 0-for-4 contract to banish red cards. So you have a good set of targets to complete your contracts, because a lot of decks run like a good chunk, at least like 20 plus red cards, even for like the slower control decks, right? The real piece is that it has the built-in CNC effect, right? So as you get a card from the top, and you get a card in the arsenal. This is up to 1 card, which is interesting wording.
Get Lexi. Oh, sorry, up to 1. So you can choose 0. Sorry.
The CNC,
in
CNC
my mind, I
is
was like, at least the 1. Sorry, yes, you cannot target 2.
Yeah. So active disruption will be at a premium to be able to fight off those aggro decks, and at a 0 cost, it should definitely be like a staple in all assassin builds.
Yeah,
like it's a 3.
It's a really good card. Yeah. You can always give it a go again with your black tech whisperers.
Yeah, if you black tech like hit their I would probably have this somewhere in the chain. I don't know if it matters if you start with it or not, but if they're definitely gonna be more likely to block it if they do have like an arsenal card, right? So which is good. You want them to be kind of trading cards, because you have an effect that reduces their deck, right?
Yeah.
So very, very good card. Regicide. Regicide's interesting. It's a legendary specialization. It's purely just anti-royal tech, right? If Royals becomes like a big part of the meta, like with Crown of Dominion, and Regicide is like a cool card to like have an alternate win con, it's mainly going to be a blue 0 block for 3. If the game goes real late, and like you can track what's in their hand, and you can hit them for essentially 3 unblockable damage, because it also can't be blocked by cards with the same name in the defending zero's banish zone, right? So if you're banishing a bunch of their cards and you can track exactly what's left in their deck, it does become a way to get 3 unblockable damage. It is true. It is a thing that does happen without any buffs. I wouldn't count on it. I'd probably just block with it. I probably wouldn't risk it. Be like, oh, well, if the game is long enough, I probably just like screwed up the stack here, unless I absolutely know what's in there. That's pretty much it as far as that. What are we on now? Surgical Extraction. So this is the second last tab. This is the last majestic attack action, right? So Surgical Extraction is definitely different because it's 2 costs, right? So it's a blue 2 cost majestic that blocks 3, comes in for 4. On it's real good because it's one of the only hand disruption cards Assassin has at release, other than the one that I just talked about, right? So
banishes the arsenal.
The artist. Yeah, well, it destroys the arsenal. Yeah, so this is the other one where it actually banishes. So you get to look at their hand and banish a card. So it's Thoughtseize, right? So it's real. It's very similar to like your Dominia effect, right? Which can be really powerful here, and that's probably why it's the 2 costs here. So the on hit is quite good because it's that, and it's essentially a 3 of the same with the other majestics, and the deck's already running a fair amount of blue as far as the contract is banishing opponents' blue cards. So you're getting like those really key kind of pitch cards that they need to make their hand function, and if their hand already has a bunch of blues in hand, it's probably not hitting you for that much anyways, right? So it can be pretty decent. It is okay. It is okay with like a Spider's Bite turn. So you like Tunic and then you Spider's Bite into Surgical off a blue card, because you get 4 pitch, and you can Spider's Bite, Surgical, and then if that on like a 2-card hand, one of them being Surgical. I think you run 3. You can pitch it. You can block with it. It's a good card.
I think so. Yeah.
No problem with it. It doesn't seem like I don't think you're running Pummel for this card. Don't get me wrong here.
No.
It'd be funny though, because you essentially get 2 cards out of their hands if it hits. You get 1 from Pummel, and you then one from Extraction. But it's like the only 2 costs I'd probably play, other than maybe
run CNC maybe. Yeah, but that's a
Oh,
bit
maybe,
iffy.
maybe. You never know, right?
Yeah.
Payday is the last Majestic. This was the Rudy spoiler, I believe, the Rudy spoiler card. So Payday. So the card on the surface looks like a whole lot of average as far as like comparing it to the other three Majestics, which look quite good.
Right.
It's a blue. It has 3 block. It doesn't have go again, so you'll always have to end your turn on Payday
Yeah, which
and have
makes
another.
sense, I guess, because it is the payoff after you've hit or after you've completed a contract, right?
Yeah. The issue is also you have to have another blue to pay for the cards before. So you
True.
have to like
It
have
is
a
a blue in
blue
itself.
spider bite
Yeah.
contract, yeah, and then play this from hand. So like if this
Yeah.
is your only blue card, you can't really play it. Like
It's
you
true.
can't you can play it. You can play it off like a zero contract, have go again off your black text, and then play Payday,
Yeah.
assuming you've hit. But
Although
like
I will say that if it were a red, it'd be strictly worse, right? So
yeah, for sure. It
yeah.
is a majestic.
Yeah.
It is also like none of the contract cards have go again. You're relying on like Razor, the boots. The
Mm-hmm.
line would probably be like Spider's Bite into like some kind of contract card into like Razor, and then you play Payday, assuming you actually get the hit.
Yeah.
It's 4 silvers. It equates to essentially 2 life because you get 2 equipment procs, right? Because it costs
Mm-hmm.
2 silver per equipment. You can
That's
get a
true.
1 defense. So it's 2 life and 2 procs through bringing the equipment back. The equipment's quite strong, especially the mask. I think getting 2 extra procs on the mask is really nice because you're banishing 1 additional card. So instead of banishing 1 card on like a contract hit, you're banishing 2 cards. Doing that
Mm-hmm.
twice, it's real good, especially in Blitz where you only start with 40 cards. I think there is a reason, like it could be okay, and it's worth testing it. I don't know if it's a staple. I think it's worth testing it
Yeah.
at the very least, compared to the other three, which I think are definitely 3 ofs, like
Right.
staple 3 ofs for sure. This is the majestic that I'm a little unsure of.
Yeah. I mean, there might be a point where you just generate too much silver that you can't even spend, right? This
Oh, I'll
one,
spend it. Just watch me. I'll spend it
I mean, at least you
because then
can
you're
pitch
always
through to
spending the
draw a
on
card.
hits.
At least you can always use the
You
silver for what it
can,
is,
you
right?
can. Honestly, it doesn't even sound that bad if you're running a bunch of
Yeah.
blues.
Yeah.
This like it's on board free generation.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not. If you really have too many blues, being able to recycle a blue for
Yeah.
this,
It's
it's
not
in
bad.
a pinch, it's not terrible here, right? So we're going to the commons and rares now. The way I evaluated these are a lot of them are quite similar. The only thing that's different really is their contract
Yeah.
or and their cost, right? So I'll kind of evaluate them if I think based on like their contract targets as well as do I think they're like more valuable in as like a 3 of in reds and blues, maybe yellows, that kind of thing.
Right.
So we're starting with Plunder the Poor, which is an interesting one in that I think I think it's just a little bit too. It's a 0 for 4, which I like. It's a red, and you're banishing opponent's card with cost 1 or less, so it's definitely going to hit stuff in like aggro matchups where a lot of their costs are. A lot of our
Yeah.
cards cost less, but it's going to do nothing against Guardian
Yeah.
and cards like that. Like you're gonna have no targets, so it's probably just gonna be like, all right, that's fine. But or they're just gonna straight up block it anyways. Like they're gonna block everything.
Yeah. I mean, these all
Um,
seem like kind of tech cards for different situations, right?
yeah. So it's really like I probably wouldn't go too heavy on these. Like I wouldn't run like the blues and the reds kind of thing. I like it at 0 cost, but that's about it. I don't really have that many more comments on that. I think it's fine. It is rare, which is interesting. Like I don't really know why this particular one is rare. Maybe because it's 0 cost, but Rob the Rich is also rare. So
Yeah. And one
I
for
don't know. It
five,
might
yeah, not horrible.
it might be the cost. Yeah, it might be the cost. Like the contracts with like card costs might be that. So depending on like how easy it is to hit the contract.
Yeah, it's true.
Rob the Rich is the 1 cost version. So it's a 1 for 5 targeting 2 costs or greater. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
definitely see more uses into class like Guardian. It might be key in the meta, might not. This might be like one of those. I don't think you want to sideboard into these cards. I think you want to like
Yeah.
run the ones you run, and that's it. Like I don't think you want to use sideboard slots on like
Yeah.
attack actions that might target more easily.
Yeah, you're right.
Um, the 1 for 5s are a little bit less enticing to me, just because I like to have one floating to be able to like Razor or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, or at least Threaten Razor. Like I always love Threaten Razor in these kinds of decks because it's going to be so pivotal to get the go again, and it's going to be pivotal to actually hit the on hit, right? To actually trigger your boots, right? So getting cards out of hand is really really nice. So I think Rob the Rich is a little awkward because you're not going to have the one floating if you want a Spider's Bite,
Right.
but targets a lot of stuff. Targets Pummel too, which is kind of funny.
True.
Um, So that's that. So we're on to Shred. I love the
Shred.
art on this card.
This
When the
is
card art came out for this,
crazy.
fantastic. I definitely do think this is worth the rare. Like this definitely makes sense as a rare.
Yeah.
So the target defending assassin, the target card defending an assassin attack. So attack means it could be Spider's Bite also. Gets -4 at red, 3 at yellow, 2 at blue. So I think Shred's definitely a core card in most assassin decks, if not all. In the blue for sure. I think yellow and then like res in the sideboard is kind of what I'm thinking, depending on like how many D reacts, like sinks and face they're running, because Shred will just immediately counter one of the 0/4s. It will shine in like the mid range and control. Less important to aggro again because they're not blocking. It has a higher flexibility and impact ceiling, but less chance of a contract hit compared to like Cut the Chase. It's essentially letting you fully ignore a Sink and Fate. If they're running those, but you won't get like a second Arachne ability, if that makes sense. Like you're not able to use the Cut to the Chase. Well, if you have Cut to the Chase, you can use both, but like Cut to the Chase gives you that extra ability to like look at another card like Arachne, but we'll cover that a little bit later. So it's a little bit less enticing there, but it just gives you, in exchange, it gives you like a +1. So like the red is 4 instead of 3, 3 instead of 2, and 2 instead of 1, right?
Yeah.
So I think this will be like an 8 or 9 of. I think this is really core to the strategy. I think it blocks for 3. Really not a lot of downsides for a rare. I think it's just a core rare. Nothing much there. We'll move on to the commons here. Annihilate the Armed. 1 for 5. Targets attack action, so most decks will have them, other than Kano and maybe Icelander. So there's a good amount of targets in the banish. The 1 card costs are a bit less flexible, as I kind of noted before. You could have like Tunic up, and that would be fine. So you can like use Tunic to get this off on like your 1 card hands. But I feel like a lot of the Arachni hands are going to be 1 to 2 cards tops, unless you're going to be taking a shit ton of damage for whatever reason, for like an Eradicate. Like I feel like you'll take damage for like Eradicate and cards like that, those power cards. You're not going to be taking damage to like Annihilate the Armed.
Right.
Like it's just not, because it doesn't stop the opponent from clapping back at you, right? So
yeah, I mean a lot of cards don't, right? I think that's probably one of the issues too with the class, is that most of the time you're completing contracts that are off of the deck and not the hand or the arsenal. So
correct,
you're putting on this pressure, but it's like it's pressure for later. In the moment they can always clap back.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I would run the reds for this because there's a lot of targets, like attack actions. That's great. Like Eradicate after this thing, and you're probably getting a bunch of silver. So it's probably one of the 1 for 5s I'm more interested in running 3 of. So, pretty decent. Fleece the Frail, another one of the 0 for 4s on the opposite side here. So Fleece the Frails is the one that does opponent's cards with 2 or less defense.
Yeah.
Which is like probably more into like aggro, aggro decks like Fire are going to have more of those kinds of cards.
Yeah.
It'll also be 2 or less block will be a lot of the attack reactions, like Razor Reflex, 2 or less block, but
pummels.
It's 0 for 4, which I like. Yeah, pummels, exactly. Those kinds of cards. A lot of the generic cards and like Monarch and Tails, a lot of 2 blocks there.
Right.
Non-class, non-talent cards. It's fine. It's a 0 for 4.
Yeah, I think
it's just a fine card. I don't really know if it's like particularly better or worse. I think you might run the 3.
You probably run the red.
Not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably run the red, and that'll probably be fine. I don't think you'd probably particularly want to run the blue here if over different blues.
Yeah.
Nix the Nimble, 1 for 5 in red targets reaction cards. So it seems more niche as far as the contract targets reaction count in most decks, other than maybe like Dorinthia won't be like particularly high. More than likely looking for something like it's more than likely than looking for Yellow Pitch like Eradicate. I'm not a super big fan of running more than like just the reds here for that reason. The next one here, Sack the Shifty. Get that correctly?
Love that name.
Sack the Shifty. It's a really shifty looking name here. So targeting Go Again. Cards with Go Again, right? So again, same kind of thing here. I'm not gonna. It's based on your contract target here. Base Go Again, exactly. Yeah. So, it'll hit aggro decks. It'll hit decks like Briar. Yeah. It's a 0 for 4, so it's fine. Again, a lot of these you'll run just because like you don't really have that many other options.
Exactly.
Like I don't know if I really want to. Like the blue might be okay. Also, I think the blue is kind of fine because you might actually get the blue 2 off against an aggro deck.
Right.
To actually hit a go again card, which is kind of good. So I might actually run the blues here, depending on what the meta looks like. Last two cards here, Slay the Scholar. So this was Okay and Wise.
Yeah.
Okay and
Spoiler.
Wise card. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, they're spoilers. Slay the Scholar is 0 for 4, so I like it. Banishing non-attack cards. I really like this card.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of decks run non-attacks. Some run less than others, but a lot of them run non-attacks. So I think Slay the Scholar is definitely a 3 of in red, possibly also a 3 of in blue. Decent card, decent amount of cards it can hit. Last card. We're cutting to the chase here. Cutting to the chase. Let's just cut to the chase. But so attack reaction costs 0. I already like it. It's an attack reaction that costs 0. So this and Shred are definitely going to be in the decks.
Yeah.
It buffs target assassin actions with a built-in Arachne effect to boot. It gives you that increased flexibility, right? So you can look at the top card of the defending hero deck and put it to the bottom, and then in this particular case, you have your contract out, so you kind of know what you're trying to target. So you have even more flexibility if you've already put a card from Arachne top to bottom. You're now looking at the second one, and like maybe you're hitting the second one, so you keep it there, right? Or it's just another power card that, as I said before, you can just put to the bottom. 0 for +3, blocks for 3. It's got better
really
better stats than Razor.
Yeah.
Like it's at least blocks for 3.
Doesn't give go again, but that is a really good card.
Yeah, but in this particular case, you can use a 0-cost contract into like a 0-cost cut the chase. You're coming in for 7 off 2 cards without any pitch, which is mucho strong.
Oh yeah.
Definitely run the 3 reds.
E-strike level, right?
Yeah, you might run the blues or the yellows. It really depends on like how many shreds you're running, I think, and how like dense your deck is going to be with the reactions. But I think the reds are in for sure. And you might want to run the blues or the yellows also, depending on what your deck is trying to do. Oh god, that was a lot of cards. You see, the whole damn class was spoiled, so I had to go through every single one of them.
Yep.
So
that was a good.
You know what I think about? Yeah, I think Arachne will be an interesting hero. I think he will take a little bit of time for people to adjust to his play style, playing him and playing against him. But definitely something we're going to be looking at playing more on the channel.
Yeah, a welcome addition, I think, to the meta, to the game, because every game has a mill hero. Now we have ours, so control heroes beware.
All right, are we on Ranger?
We're on Ranger now.
All right,
a very hyped class, I think, in this review.
Only reviewing five cards. Lucky me. Sure. It was a regular class spoiler, so I don't have to talk about every single one of these cards here. So we're gonna start off with the bow here. Sand Scour Great Bow. So like the thing with Ranger is aim counters. Like that's the not necessarily a keyword. Well, it's not a keyword. It's just like a new thing.
A new counter they can accumulate.
Yes, Sand Scour Great Bow here. So the two-handed Great Bow costs 1 to use. Once per turn action to get a card from hand or top of deck into the arsenal face up, right? So the arrow itself doesn't gain go again, like Voltaire.
Yeah.
Or any other buffs like Voltaire or some of the other bows, right? So the key is that it doesn't gain them directly, but it does gain the aim counter. And so the aim counter will give the specific arrow certain buffs, such as piercing or something like an on hit. I don't think this bow is really for Lexi, since Voltaire at New Horizon just still seems like the gold standard. I don't think this is going to replace that in Lexi. But with Azalea, it's mainly competing with Death Dealer, as that is what's being more used like competitively. There's like Redliner and Dreadbore and stuff like that. But like the Death Dealer, Azalea is kind of seen as the thing to do, exactly. So that's kind of what it's competing with. The bow purely depends on the power of aim counters, right? Because that's what it does. You're paying 1 to put something either from the top or hand into arsenal and put an aim counter on it, right? Yeah. So there are a fair amount of arrows that do benefit: long shot, hammer and spore, drill shot, dead eye, immobilizing shot. There's a good portion of the arrows that are decent / good as far as their effects go with the aim counter. However, without Death Dealer, I feel like there's like more of a cap on how good the turn can be. And I'm not sure the aim counters really pick up the slack. I'd rather kind of just like point the tip that you can like it's a red, blue, yellow. You could run as many as you want for a buff, and you get the aim counter on it. Like you're not kind of you get less flexibility to like, I can't get an aim counter pretty much whatever I want without this one card. You can still get an aim counter of most of the arrows in your deck that want an aim counter, right? So I think not having Death Dealer to like draw you the card and having to combo off Azalea and Cross Wrap is a little on the awkward side.
Yeah.
I think time will tell. I still just think based on the arrows I've seen from the set, I still think Death Dealer is probably better, but maybe someone has a crazy ass aim counter build with the Great Bow, and then I'm just gonna be talking out of my ass, right? Hemorrhage Boar. So this is a 1-for-5 red arrow, which is essentially like a watered down CNC, which is exactly what it is with the same rate, because it's a 1-for-5 instead of a 2-for-6. The difference is you can use D-Reacts into this. Of course, you can play increase detention or release detention to kind of screw with whether they can use D-Reacts or not. If you use both, they can't use it, period. It'll take you a blue and 3 cards to essentially emulate the CNC.
Yeah, look what they do to mimic a fraction of our power.
Yeah, that's definitely the meme. That's definitely a meme they're going to use from Invincible for sure here.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't destroy all Arsenal cards. So if you're playing into Lexi, it won't get rid of everything. However, you could run this in different colors, right? Just red, yellow, and blue. Whereas
CNC, quote unquote.
Sorry, no, not red, yellow, and blue. You can run this because you can run this in all colors. It's rare, is it not? Am I
it is a common, actually.
Oh, it's a common. So you can run the red, yellow, and blue. I think the yellow is actually probably not bad. I think the blue is
1-for-4 is fine. Yeah.
I think the 1-for-5, 1-for-4 is fine. So you can essentially run more CNCs. They're just a little bit watered down, which is pretty good. It's a very strong effect, right?
Yeah.
So it's a nice core staple. It gives you more agency into aggro decks, forces out blocks. So it's one of the better arrows in the set. I would consider running like the reds and the yellows, for sure. I think the yellows are probably the front runners, just because like you could pitch and have exactly enough to pay for like Death Dealer and something, and like your 1-cost aim arrow. Have like those more efficient hands.
I can see the blues maybe competing for the headshot slot, like the blue headshots. I think it's relatively good. It's 1 attack less than the blue headshot from Arsenal, I think, but for the on hit's
very good. The on hit's very good.
Quite good.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So really, really strong card. I think on its own, the arrow is very good, and you don't need any you need an aim counter on it, of course. So you need to find a way to get an aim counter on it, but as a vanilla card, it is on rate, right, as far as vanilla power level here. So Hornet Sting. That's the one we're looking at, right?
Hornet Sting. Oh, let me
the
find
equipment.
that.
Yeah, the equipment at the top here.
At the top. There it is. Yep.
So this is competing with Bullseye Bracers directly, right? That's the only other Ranger equipment at that slot here. So it allows for like a pseudo opt on the defense, because it says whenever it defends, reveal the top card. If it's an arrow, deal 1 damage to attacking hero or ally. Otherwise, put it on the bottom of your deck. So it's a pseudo opt on the defense. So it can confirm an Azalea with a dominated arrow. So like you can reveal the arrow, it deals the 1 damage, and then for a fact that your next Azalea, you don't even have to opt it. You can just shove it in there and it will be dominated. And it will put like that non-arrow to the bottom, which is pretty nice. It doesn't just like leave it there. It's like, oh, it's a non-arrow, you don't do the damage.
I can't do anything now. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you just you have to opt it with a cross wrap or something in the arsenal, or find another way to opt, or read the glide path or something, right? I think the 1 damage is just nice. It's just kind of like an add-on. It's not like a particularly large amount here. So I might run this in the main, side with Bullseye Bracers, and it's like Arcane Barrier with the cross wrap, because our cross wrap's Arcane Barrier 1. But if you don't need the Arcane Barrier, I might just kind of go with the Hornet Sting, because it's still the 1 armor. You don't necessarily the load on the bracers is not as amazing as it is maybe with Lexi, I think.
Yeah, there's the Arcane Barrier that you're giving up too, right? Because that one is
but
AB1.
You still have cross wrap, right? Cross wrap has your AB1. If you need AB2, then you can run it. But a lot of the times you don't have enough pitch necessarily to run it, because you probably don't run a bunch of blues in the deck anyways. So
that's fair.
I don't know. It's okay because you're probably running a good amount of yellows, and you can pitch a yellow to block AB2. But I think it really depends on what you're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Good card. I'd say probably more of a staple card in the rare slot here. So Heat Seeker. Got your heat-seeking majestic missile here. So when it hits, so this is not one of those aim arrows. You don't need an aim arrow for this. When it hits at the beginning of your end phase, put the top card of your deck face up in the arsenal. So it's another great 1-for-5 arrow in red. As the on-head, it's like pseudo snatch. It lets you put in another card in arsenal, right? So it's a very good arrow to use your cards to buff and get inherent value. I think it's interesting. You definitely want to play this either out of the arsenal, or you don't have an arsenal and you're loading and firing this, because it gives a snatch-like appearance, right?
Yeah.
Of course, it puts it face up, so you can't cross-wrap it to opt. That's fair. But it gives you fuel to Azalea, right? So, and it also, you could get lucky and get another nice face up arrow, and then draw like buffs and then fire that arrow. So it's nice. And if you're running like Snapdragon Scalar, as you can like potentially fire 2 arrows off that. So I think Heatseeker is quite good as far as inherent value, and it's on rate at a 1 for 5 in red. We got one more here. We got Deadeye, which was Yuki Lee Bender on the ball from On the Bauble. This was her. This was her reveal. Deadeye. This is probably the best Ranger card from the set. It's a fantastic card all around. It's a yellow block 3, which is honestly, if I saw nothing else, I'd be pretty down. Because that's like the pitch curve you're looking for. It blocks 3 in a pinch. It buffs +3, which is on rate for a 1 cost.
Yep.
It has that built-in Thoughtseize, which is we've only had one other card that we've talked about today that has that. And it's with the aim counter. It's very, very strong. I'm not sure if running 3 of these is gonna still want me to run Sandscour to like guarantee an aim counter.
Yeah.
But it makes Deadeye like it makes it more appealing with Deadeye. However, I think like the whole aim counter thing, I think people will kind of figure out whether like how good it is depending on like how good the arrow impacts are. I have a feeling it might just like upgrade the current Azalea decks and might not be like a sole mechanic by itself.
Right. Sprinkle
but
it
Azalea,
here and there.
Yeah, sprinkle it here and there. I think Azalea got some good tools. I'm not sure if Lexi gained that much from the Ranger cards other than possible upgraded generic arrows that I can use.
Yeah.
Both Rangers are a bit meta dependent at the moment, but aim counters seem to be like really hit or miss. There are a couple of arrows and Deadeye that make it better, but I don't think Sandscour will be worth it over the end or Death Dealer, and it might just be worth running Point the Tips, which wasn't a spoiled card, but I will mention it briefly. It is a red, yellow, blue common, cost 0, target face-up arrow in your arsenal, gains +3 until end of turn, and put an aim counter on it. Point the Tip has go again. So like if you Heatseeker and you have your arrow face up, you can just play Point the Tip, give it the aim counter.
Right.
Like it's really, really good, right? You can have some really, really strong turns. And it's a red 0 +3. It's already on rate. It does block for 2. You can't let your memes be dreams forever here. So it does block for 2, unfortunately. But it's a very good card that you could probably run multiple of as your buff because you ran Read the Glide Path, like reds and yellows and stuff like that, right? This could replace part of that. Maybe you replace part and you add others.
And the important thing is the aim counter too. So you don't really have a problem running the yellows here, I think. Even the blues if you wanted to. Because the main meat of the card is the aim counter, and all red, yellow, blue give the aim counter.
Yeah. No, that's totally true here. So that's kind of where we think, where I think. We think
I agree.
More specifically Azalea is
no counterpoints here.
All right, I'm going to take a bit of a throat break here. We're going to move on to...
we're at Runeblade.
We're finally at Runeblade. I thought I would move my voice. Okay. All right, tell me about Runeblade, Rob. Tell me about these spoiled Runeblade cards.
Yeah.
Story time.
Okay, so I want to start off by saying that looking at the cards holistically, there is a theme of a more slower Runeblade approach, which doesn't really fit with Briar's playstyle right now, nor does it really fit with Viserai's tempo-oriented playstyle. They're both very aggressive decks, and they both like to maintain tempo and maintain the aggression. A lot of these cards, if not all of them, kind of don't fall in line with that playstyle. So they're really pushing a new type of Runeblade here, and whether or not that'll work out, I'm not sure. But at a first glance, they seem pretty underpowered. So let's start by looking at the headpiece that we got, the Amethyst Tiara. It is a 1-block Blade Break, and it says instant destroy Amethyst Tiara. Rune chance you control have Spell Void 1 this turn. So at first glance, this is a defensive card, and it is to block arcane damage. So it's, first of all, it's not competing with a lot in the head slot. You have the generic headpieces. You do have the Runeblade one, the Crown of Dichotomy, which is played sometimes for the Arcane Barrier, not a whole lot for its ability, but Runeblades do need a second headpiece, so I'll give them that. But I don't know if I would want to use my Rune Chants to block damage here, especially in current decks where your Rune Chants are your source of tempo and your source of aggression. So again, I said, this is more of a new type of Runeblade where you want to be more on the defensive side. I don't know how it plays out currently in the decks, but I don't see this being run.
This card seems bad.
It seems bad for the aggressive type of Runeblades, exactly. Let's go on to
even if I'm like control OTK, why would I want to use my
Mhm.
rune chance to spell void
Oh,
instead of
if you're
just
OTK, you'll
my
never
game plan?
you'll never want to. Yeah,
But
yeah.
then what am I doing with life? Like, okay, so I'm control, but I'm not OTK, so I'm just like
Yeah.
sitting there and like praying that I don't just run out of cards.
Yeah. With
That the
banked
play?
rune chance, it
I
feels
don't
like you never want to use them to block, really, right?
no. Okay,
Unless you
sorry.
have Rune
Continue.
Blood
There you
Barrier,
go.
maybe, I don't know. But anyway. Actually, that card wasn't even used defensively. It was just to generate 4 rune chance
It was actually just
to
OTK. It
hopefully
was
use
literally
on your
OTK.
next turn.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, this card kind of out of place. Okay, next,
Mhm.
Annals of Sutcliffe, the new weapon. It is a two-handed book, so first time we see a book weapon, and it says once per turn action, pitch 3, draw a card. If an attack action card and a non-attack action card are pitched this way, create a rune chant token. So in addition to pushing a more defensive Runeblade archetype, they are pushing for a multi-pitch archetype. So pitching multiple cards to use, probably one big card per turn here. So it costs 2 cards to draw a card, right? So seemingly not really on rate. You don't really want to be doing that, and there's no go again either. So I'm not really
Mhm.
sure how you could use this. This is a bit of a mystery because it's great for cycling, I guess. Once per turn, you could just draw a card. Whenever once per turn, you can pitch 2 to draw a card. But that's all it seems to do. You draw a card, right? Or you create. Oh, I'm sorry, I had it backwards. You create a rune chant token if you pitch a non-attack and an attack card. So you always draw the card,
Yeah.
regardless of what you pitch, and you create a rune chant token. So you can theoretically create 2 rune chant tokens per turn now using your grasp and the Annals of Sutcliffe, right? It is, you can use now once per turn effects twice now with the 2 equipment pieces. Again, it's too slow and too costly. I don't see this being used really.
Yeah, it's got to be set up for next set or something like that.
I think so.
But
They like to do that, right? They like to put cards into a
yep,
supplemental
they do.
set that's going to be used in the set after. So I guess we'll keep our ears peeled, ears and eyes peeled for this. Okay, next, one of the more exciting cards, the Cryptic Crossing. It is a 3-cost, 6 attack, yellow 3 block, and it's an attack action card that reads, if an attack action card and a non-attack action card were pitched to play Cryptic Crossing, this has, the first time this deals damage to the defending hero, they discard a card and you draw a card. So really good on hit, I will say. This is a net +2 for you if it hits, right? You get strip 1 card from your opponent and you draw a card. There is no go again, but you could always give it go again with Malveon Skies. So that might be a decent combo. It is expensive for the attack value, right? 3 for 6 is above rate, or I guess it's the worst rate, so below rate, I'll say. And it is a popper as well, which Viserai lacked. You had your Runic Reclamations, and you had like generic ones like CNC Erase Face. So this does add to the popper pool. The 6 attack that gets discounted, I think. Yeah. Amplify the Arknight. Or yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. So yep, there is that one too. So you're adding to the popper list, which is good. I think that's always welcome. This might be a sideboard into Dromai, into other illusionists that come out. It's a decent attack. I'll give it that, but I don't think it's going to be really mainboarded that much. You'd probably want to play Shrill into your Malveon Skies. Okay. Next, we have Diabolic Ultimatum. This is a non-attack red that pitches or it costs 3 to play, and it says, if an attack action card was pitched to play Diabolic Ultimatum, each hero chooses and destroys an ally they control. If a non-attack action card was pitched to play Diabolic Ultimatum, each hero chooses and destroys an aura they control. So definite sideboard. Because it's red, you can't really just pitch it away and see it later. If it were blue, it might be more played, but given that it's a red, I don't think you're going to mainboard this at all. And I can see this being Dromai tech. Maybe you can destroy a dragon with it by pitching for 3, but I was thinking that maybe you might want to just attack the dragon and not play a non-attack action card. It doesn't have go again, right?
But this card can destroy all of those blessings that are scattered throughout this set.
The blessings.
Destroy all the auras.
That's why they put it, right? I will say that in addition to blessings, it can also destroy afflictions. So if you do have a Frost Hex on you, you can break your own Frost Hex with this.
True.
So, it has a unique ability to do that, but I don't see it being used. If we're talking about dragons, you can attack the dragons. You don't have to pitch 3 to use this. And but if blessings become a thing, I can see it being sideboarded. Maybe. Okay, next we have Looming Doom, a blue card that pitches that costs 3, and then blocks for 3. So decent stats at face value. It says when Looming Doom enters the arena. Oh, it's an aura, I will say. Destroy all the rune chants you control and put that many Doom counters on Looming Doom. At the beginning of your end phase, remove a Doom counter from Looming Doom. If you do, deal 2 arcane two arcane damage to any target. Otherwise, destroy Looming Doom. So, it does transform your 1 damage rune chants into 2 damage arcane effects once per turn, automatically. So you put this, this, could have a nice effect where you can maybe stack them. So, you can create some rune chants, play Looming Doom, create some more, play another Looming Doom, and then you're dealing 4 arcane damage per turn, pretty much. It's good damage, but this is what I was mentioning, where it is an anti-tempo card. You're losing damage up front to deal more consistent damage over time. So just basically anti-tempo, not what Runeblades want to do today. So remains to be seen if this will be playable. I don't think right now it's going to be played at all, because you really want to be pushing damage up front. Yeah.
So. Fair enough. I think this whole strategy is kind of weak at the moment. Maybe it'll be, played in like a different meta, or like in the next set, like when the next core set is out. But I feel like you're gonna play this thing, you're gonna die before you get like 4 to 6 damage across.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a really nice, one thing you could do with this is if you play Revel and you can't attack, they're gonna die anyway. You can play this. At that point, you wouldn't play Revel anyway, so there's really no synergy there. But you never want to lose your rune chance for consistent damage over time. At least not right now.
Okay. True. Now we got the next blessing here. Blessing of Occult, I believe, is the next spoiled card.
Blessing of Occult is down below. I can come up to that one, sure. Well, I was gonna mention Deathly Duet just briefly. It says when it attacks, if an attack action card was pitched to play it, it gains +2 attack. If a non-attack action was pitched to play it, create 2 rune chant tokens. This is a more flexible Spellblade Assault. Spellblade Assault is also like a 2/4 that creates 2 rune chants. This has the other ability that you could potentially get if you pitch an attack action card to go to 6. But there is the condition that you have to pitch a non-attack action card to make this into a Spellblade Assault. I don't really like it that much. It is more flexible.
The ceiling is 8. The ceiling is a 2/8, which is kind of nice.
If you pitch 2, it's true.
Yeah, if you pitch like a red and a something
that's
else.
True.
Right?
That's true.
Like,
you can pitch
it
both.
Just has to be a red.
Yeah. It may replace Spellblade Assault in most decks, but you have to. You might not even get the effect you want. That's the problem. Like, you have to have the card to pitch for it. That's a non-attack or attack in the cases you want it. So it's flexible. I'll give it that, and it might replace Spellblade Assault. Okay, Blessing of the Occult. So a 1-costed 2 defense at the start of your turn. Destroy Blessing of the Occult, and then create 3 rune chant tokens. So it is one of those blessings that we talked about. This is basically like your Runeblade incantation, right? Which is instead of giving you 1 rune chant per turn, it creates 3 all at once, which I like. I think that's better. You get them all at once, but it doesn't have go again. So you have to end your turn on this thing, which means like you can't really reset at the end of your turn or anything like that. So slower, but rune chants up front, not bad. I don't think this replaces Runeblade incantation right now, because the rune chants you get over time also do help you to play like multiple Gloom Veils too. If you get one turn and one the other turn, you want to be able to pop them off on both turns. This does give you the 3rd effective Gloom Veil on the turn you get the rune chants, though. So you can have unblockable arcane damage if it hits, but it's a bit niche. I don't think it replaces it. So pass for me, I think. I've got a few more here. Just in the comment slot, we have Aether Slash. It's a 1-costed 4 attack. 1 Aether Slash attacks. If a non-attack action card was pitched to play it, deal 1 arcane to any target. Pack filler, I think. The 1 arcane isn't really strong enough, I think. I don't know if
it's a 1 for 5. If a non-attack was pitched to play it, like Runeblade, a lot of Runeblade decks have pretty even non-attack to attack action ratios. So having a 1 for 4 conditional 1 for 5, it doesn't have go again, but you can give it with Moth.
It's just hard to find a slot to put this in right now. I don't know what I would cut out for it. That's the problem.
Well, mixed damage is always strong. Like mixed damage is just super, super good, right? So I think it's worth considering at this cost.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I'll agree with you there. I think it's just hard to fit it in right now.
Yes.
Let's skip all the way down to the Skyfire Lanterns, because that was the one that was revealed. 0 costed red, blocks for 2. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's red, create a rune chant token. Same thing for yellow. Reveal a card. If it's yellow, create a rune chant token, and blue, if it's blue, you create a rune chant token. Very interesting card because it has synergy with itself. The more reds you play, the more chances you have of hitting this effect. I like the blues the most, I think, because you can always pitch it away. Or if you're in a pinch and you really want to have a rune chant, you can just play it for a potential rune chant. I do like the blues, but I think the red might be too weak. It'd be nice if it created multiple rune chants and not just banked off of seeing a red on top. Like if the red created 3, that'd be nice. If the yellow created 2 and the blue created 1. Might be too strong that way, but I would see that being the way that I would play the reds.
How would you fit this in your deck? Like what do you have to tell yourself be like, yes, I have this really tight Viscerai deck. Yeah, I read the runes. Okay, it doesn't have go again, but it's like turn 0 anyways. It's like, oh, this has go again, but like what I'm running 9 Maws. Like how many non-attacks are so bad that like I want to run this one rune shed generate.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
you've become the Arc Knights. I'm thinking of the blue
grasp,
non-attacks. Like, yeah, I mean, you have grasp too, exactly.
It's also blocks for 2. It blocks for 2.
That's true. Become the Arc Knight blocks for 3, and you wouldn't cut that card anyway. So you got the 3
I don't
blue
like
Maws.
I don't like this card at all. Like I really don't like this card. It's probably like one of the worst cards in the Runeblade kind of thing. I prefer Looming Doom. Like I at least that card blocks.
At least it blocks for 3, right? It's true.
Yeah, I don't know about this one, boys. This guy, it makes a nice mat. I'll give it that.
It's a nice card. Nice looking card. Yeah.
I'm not itching to play this card. Put it that way.
Okay, that's it for Runeblade. Skipping on now to Wizard. You're back on.
Oh, Wizard.
This is
So
one of your main classes, or used to be.
Sure, let's call it a main
Sure.
class. So Wizard's an interesting spot where like I think they really did try to focus on Kano again, because Icelander got kind of like a hell of a lot of cards in Uprising, and she had like ice cards and tails. I think the card pool was just quite high for Icelander, and so they were trying to add different tools that you could run in both, but maybe they're slightly more on the like Kano oriented side here. So a couple cards for Wizard here. We're going to start with Sap. We're going to start in order chronologically from when they were revealed here, right? So Sap, which is Team Covenant promo, I believe. So they got that nice alternate art here. So Sap, Surge is like the new keyword for the set for Wizard, right? So Surge, essentially, if it deals more than X damage, depending on like, whatever the card, if it's like 3, so Surge will be like, you need to deal 3, you need to deal more than 3 Arcane, 4, more than 4 Arcane, etc., etc. So Sap is essentially better Zap. I bet that was like the play on words they were going for here, right? Sap is better than Zap.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
So it's the better Zap that essentially can remove an energy counter. Right now, it's just Tunic and Alluvian, I believe, that have energy counters. Probably more equipment with energy in the future, though. So any deck that runs Zap would just run Sap now. Like it's just the same with upside. There's literally no reason to run Zap. It is literally.
You could play both if you wanted to. Probably wouldn't, but
if you have the space. And there's also a good amount of buffs that can get this over that amount, like over 3, right? So like if they're on Arcane Barrier 3, then getting a +4 on this thing's a little bit difficult. But if they're not on Arcane Barrier 3 and you buff this thing by 3, you can get the Zap cost.
Yeah.
Which is a thing. It's not the most useful, but a 0 for 3 is a 0 for 3. That's on rate.
And against a deck that doesn't block, you can always Crucible of Aetherwave this thing, right? Bring it to 4, and then if they don't block any of it, there's the Surge effect.
Exactly. So speaking of Surge, well, I guess not speaking of Surge. This is the card that doesn't have Surge. Surgent Aethertide. You see what they did there?
And didn't even have the Surge ability.
Didn't even have Surge on it here. So the competition for this card is Waning Moon and Crucible of Aetherwave, right? As far as like the playables, like I guess you're competing with what are those? You're competing with Kraken's
Aetherweave, Kraken's Aetherweave, yep.
And that other card, Aether Conduit, you're competing with.
We don't talk about Aether Conduit.
We don't talk about Aether Conduit here on the channel. So the competition is Waning Moon and Crucible of Aetherweave, right? So once per turn, at action speed, which is important to note here. So it costs 2, deals 1 Arcane to opposing hero. Note this is opposing. You cannot deal this to yourself. It's already below rate. Like you're paying 2 to deal 1, right? Mm-hmm. So it's got to have a hell of an effect here. So the effect it has is Aether Flare on a stick. That's what's attached to it here. So it can be interesting if you can buff Aethertide.
Yeah.
However, nothing that buffs Aethertide came out in Dynasty, and we've seen the whole set. Everything buffs a wizard card, like a you have to play a card and it buffs that card.
Like a non-attack
It
action
doesn't.
card.
Yeah, like an action card essentially, right?
Yeah.
Nothing buffs your weapon. It's not like the next time you were to deal arcane damage off a source, deal this much instead, or deal
Right.
plus this. The wording very specifically is like you'll see Blessing of Aether, which is like the biggest one here, that came out of the set. It specifically says that at the start of the turn, destroy it. The next card you play this turn does that. Not the next activation, not the next source, not the next whatever, right? So I don't see any ways to buff this thing. So I think it's just more value to run like Crucible of Aetherweave or Waiting in the Mirror or something. It's just better because you just like, if it were to deal Arcane and now deals one more, like it's just better.
Yeah, it's funny how
So
it has the
I don't
buff
see
of
it.
a Crucible of Aetherweave, but it's conditional on this hitting,
Mhm.
right? It's
And it
kind of you're
costs
paying
2.
an extra. Yeah, you're paying an extra for one arcane, and if it hits, you get the buff. So it's
I don't
trickier
like
to
this.
play. Yeah,
I don't like it.
yeah,
You also can't do it on their turn, whereas Crucible you
yeah.
can.
That's true. That's true. It's an instant. Yeah,
Instant
yeah.
speed versus action, that's a thing.
It's true. Yep.
Speaking of cards that have things attached to them, we have Brainstorm by Mr. Mark Poole himself. I love the art from someone like Steve Argyle and Mark Poole.
Yeah.
Big brain,
It's
big
fine,
brain
right?
plays coming through. I thought it was hilarious. They just put a big ass brain. It reminds me of the Futurama episode where they go to the brain planet. Um,
Oh, here
and
it is.
you have
Sorry.
you have
Yeah.
look for the brain.
It's just
Um,
just the brainstorm,
did
literally.
Mark Poole? Did he do Channel Thunderstep too? This
Yeah,
man
he did.
must
He
love
did.
clouds. This man loves clouds and lightning. Clearly, there's a theme going on here. So
Good,
this is a blue
good
3 cost
observation.
instant. This is a blue 3 cost instant, so you need a blue card and Brainstorm to play it. Until the end of turn, when you draw a card, this action phase, so either your own or the opponent's, deal 1 arcane to any target. Cool. So you can't buff this arcane to more than 1. It says specifically itself does not have the arcane damage effect. It's not modified by the arcane damage modifiers. That's a very good point to note here. Because then it could just hit like 2 or 3 per draw card. Then there's
Right.
like three arcane damage. You draw 3
That'd be
cards,
nice.
you're doing 9 arcane to it. Oh, it would be
That'd be
broken, is what it
nice.
would be. So you can't do that. So it costs a minimum of 2 cards. On rate would be about 4 arcane for a blue. So I'm using Crucible Blue Voltic as
Right.
your static rate. So off of a blue, you can Crucible Blue Voltic. You do 4 arcane damage off of that, off one source. So you need to draw 4 cards to do that equivalent value. So you would need to either combine with like Tome of Aetherwind, Tome of Findel. Maybe it has some synergies with like Kraken Aethervein, where like you pitch a blue and then if you hit, you get to draw a card. So it's kind of doing like 2 arcane after this. Maybe like Potion of Luck. Like it's like a Sift Him deck with Brainstorm in it, but it seems a little too cute for a card that doesn't block.
Yeah.
Like you have to remember that it's a very expensive card to play, and I don't see a lot of ways to like break this card on average turns. I feel like you have to have like impeccable setup to really make this work. Maybe a pitch stack, but
Right.
like tomes are kind of the best way to do so.
Yep.
And the card seems fine. I don't think it's an amazing majestic. Like there are sometimes those majestics in the set where you're just kind of like question mark.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe someone will break it. I don't know. What do I know, right? Now we have Swell Tidings. I think this is a swell card. It's a majestic.
It's beautiful.
Cost 2 red, 5 arcane. So it's on rate. I love on rate cards. Efficiency gets me up in the morning. And it's just a better Voltic. I love better versions of Power Grip. Like we have a Zap, we have Swell Tidings. So Kano is just getting an upgrade.
It's true.
It deals 5 or more. It creates a Ponder. That's the surge effect. So it creates a Ponder, which is just a guy like essentially pondering his life decisions about why Power Creep is a thing, right?
Uh-huh.
So usually the max Arcane Barrier in a deck will run as 3 currently. Usually, Arcane Lantern. The aggro is not going to run 3, obviously.
Yeah.
So you would need to buff this by 4 in that case, right? Because you would need to do 9 damage. And then with Arcane Barrier 3, you're getting 6 through, which is more than 5, and you get the Ponder, right? That's just essentially a +3 off a Red Blessing and the +1 off Crucible. It's not super unreasonable, right? You might need a Tunic to make it more efficient, but it's not like incredibly unreasonable to play the Blessing, Arsenal the Swell Tidings, and get it out the second turn off of like a blue Tunic. Sorry, not a blue Tunic, off the blue, because you've already set up the Blessing from the previous turn, right? If they're on no Arcane Barrier, then you literally just Crucible this thing and you're good to go, because it's going to do 6 damage off of Crucible, right? So which is quite nice. Ponder lets you refresh an arsenal, right? So refresh an arsenal card to Swell Tidings seems the most ideal way. So you play this out of arsenal, then you get the ponder, and then in the turn the ponder will let you at end phase draw the card, and you can arsenal it, right? Or if you don't have an arsenal and you're playing this card, that's also the key. So if they're playing it out of arsenal or not having it in arsenal, or not having an arsenal, would be the best way to take advantage of ponder, because you're just getting a free card. You get the free refresh. Yeah, it might be a blue, and if it's a blue, that's sad. That's a sad life you live. Maybe it's not a blue, maybe it's a red, maybe it's even one of those like power cards that you've been hoping and dreaming you would draw, right? So that's Swell Tidings. Swell card. I love it.
Yep.
Aether Quickening. What an interesting card. This is the promo from the Rudy kit, I think. The Dynasty Rudy kit. They have extended art quickenings here. So it's a red 1 for 4, so it's on rate. On rate. If it deals more than 4, it gains Go Again. Now, have you ever seen a wizard action against Go Again? No, I don't think so, because it doesn't exist until now here. So gaining Go Again is very good. It lets you play something like a Tome to keep going off like Kano flips, possibly an attack action depending on the deck. If you're playing Icelander, maybe it's not bad. I don't think so, because I don't know how you buff that thing as Icelander. It's probably mainly for Kano. I'm thinking this thing's really like he's got a book in his hands. He's doing all kind of zappy things, right? I'm thinking you're running Tomes after this.
Yep.
And it's dealing 5 with this essentially just requires a +3 if they're on Arcane Barrier 2, which is super doable. It's not like one of those insurmountable cards that you need such good setup to maximize value, right? I think just having the Go Again and having a Tome is like super reasonable. And it only costs 1, so having extra pitch for Tome of Findel out of the arsenal, real strong in my opinion here, because you can essentially pitch a blue. Like you set up a blessing from the previous turn, or you have like a stir or something to buff it by +3. You pitch a blue, play those 2 cards. You have Tome from the arsenal, then maybe like tunic the Tome out of the arsenal, and you're like gaining 4 life. It's pretty good that you could just like Kano your life away. It seems pretty strong. The ceiling seems pretty nice. And speaking of Blessing of the Aether and +3s, Blessing of the Aether is the last card I'm going to be talking about. Red, blue, and yellow. This was spoiled like in the very beginning. I think, here. This was the promo I think. Yep, from November. No, October kit.
October.
So it seems like the theme of Wizard non-attack arcane spells. This one is, buffing to make Surge a thing, to make Surge active, right? So Blessing of the Aether is a very good way of doing this, in my opinion. As far as the blessing goes, all of the blessings in this set, this, in my opinion, is the best one because it has such good upside. Whereas the other ones are like kind of conditional at best, bad at worst.
This one synergizes really well with the Surge ability, which I think is
synergizes as well.
Fantastic.
Yep. And it can come off the top as Kano, like the fact it doesn't have Go Again. You can also play this off Aether Quickening. Like if you have another one in hand, you could play this thing and pass to like buff your next Surge thing and like Arsenal, and like that's pretty good. Unfortunately, there's no synergy with Wildfire, because Wildfire needs to be the opposing turn.
Okay,
right?
That makes sense.
At the start of your turn, you destroy Blessing, and then the next card, blah, 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 blah.
Right. Strictly on your turn, yeah. So
that's like the one awkward thing, is like it won't come into play until your own turn. But it could lead to very strong plays on your own turn using Stir the Aether Winds, Aether Flares, Snapback. Like there's some good stuff you can do with this here. Definitely, I think this card will come into play on the new Kano decks, especially in CC, is my guess. On average, I think Surge is, as far as all the keywords we've seen, Surge is quite nice. It just relies heavily on buffs. I imagine Crucible will be like key with like Blessing, Stir, Flare, Wildfire, still like key cards here. But really buffing Kano a lot more than Icelander, which is fair. I think Icelander got enough from Uprising. I really don't think you need to be giving that deck more cards at the moment.
Yeah.
So
she's doing fine.
Yeah. I think again, Wizard is just like, I think the only thing that's gonna hold the class back is the players. Like they're either super good and they're gonna win a lot, or it's a very hard class and stuff to win off different decks, right?
Okay.
What do we got next year?
Right, Illusionist next.
So we got Illusionist and then generic. Thank God. Okay, cool. So
yeah, almost there. Yeah.
Illusionist, come on, Eric, you could do it.
Yeah, Soraya.
Are we starting with Soraya?
If you want, we can go in any order you want.
Is there a Marvel Soraya, or is it just cold foil?
There is a Marvel. So there's the Marvel, there's the cold foil.
There's the rainbow foil, the cold foil, and the Marvel. That is disgusting.
I want all 3.
I can't wait to pay for this card.
Yep.
Okay, so it's. Well, I guess technically we're starting at Draconic.
Sure.
No, we talked about we talked
Well,
about
we
Draconic
mentioned
last
it
time.
at the
We talked
beginning.
about it
Yeah.
last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Way
let's start
back.
with Soraya. Sure. So let's
Sure.
start with Soraya. So this is a super interesting card. So it's a light illusionist invocation, Prism LL Link, but it
Yeah.
can be only used in Prism Blitz at the moment. It costs 2 to transform a spectral into Soraya, and then another 2 to attack with it. Right. So the invoke is 2, and the attack is 2. You banish a light card from Soul for Soraya to do one arcane to any target. So it's like the first the first part is like whenever you attack, you do that, and then it comes in as 4 power, 4 defense. Sorry, not defense, 4 life because it is an ally. I keep thinking of Nitro of the
Yeah.
defense. Oh, that one has temper,
We'll
yeah, but
still
that
figure
one's
that
an
one
item.
out.
It's not.
Yeah.
That one's an item, so you can't kill it, but it can block, which is fair.
Yeah.
So it also has lifelink, which is kind of nice. Lifelink being,
Mm-hmm.
the magic keyword, but what I mean is like the damage you do is the damage you're going to heal,
Like
which
life
is kind
steal
of fun.
too in many
It
video
definitely
games.
reminds me of like mono white in Magic. It has all the same kind of like angels mono white, and I think it's an interesting hero. The ward 4 interesting ally. Sorry, the ward 4 is a bit awkward, so you have to keep it. You have to keep blocking essentially all the time to keep up the
because you can't
blue and yellow.
choose to not use it, right?
Correct. If you would be dealt damage, you prevent 4 damage. Right now, you can have different ward that like sits in front of it, and then like based on the stack, it's just kind of like, well, I'll ward
What do you
this, I'll
pick
ward
with?
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is ward 4. You need to essentially block up and then keep either yellow or blue back to attack. So it turns into how efficient it is to keep her out multiple turns, but also keep enough soul to attack. Like you want to have at least 3 or 4 soul. I think the higher the better. To be able to use Uriah effectively.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a stable card in Light Illusionist, even though we don't have one in CC at the moment. Especially with spectral generation cards such as like Heralds, like if you run Blitz Prism, like Herald Protection that creates a spectral on hit. Obviously, Prism's own ability creates spectrals. There are other cards new in the set that are focused on spectral shields, which is kind of interesting. But I think this card is quite good. It's for a 2 cost to invoke this thing, and it has 4 health. It will get EV essentially right after turn 1. Like you attack once with it, and if you could attack more than once with it, then you're just chilling. You're just gaining life, or you're forcing blocks either way, right?
Yeah.
So I think the card's quite good, and I think it'll be a beautiful, beautiful card that people will pay insane amounts of money on because Prism mains are rich. So looking at the next one I have on my list is Phantasmal Symbiosis, which is the Majestic. It's a yellow, so it's a yellow 1 for 6 Illusionist, which is on rate because the on rate for Illusionist is Wartune Herald, which is essentially your generic-ish Herald. So it's 1 for 6 at yellow. It can be used with Footsteps, which is nice because it is just an Illusionist attack action to ensure that you can keep going after it gets popped. I'm not totally sure what this is used for at the moment. It seems more of like a future set hero for like an Illusionist hero that we don't have yet. That's going to be like using a lot of these spectral shields or like an iris based build.
I guess you can, like, if you know your opponent's poppers, you can kind of call those out and they can't pop with them anymore. So if you're like, oh, they might have CNC in hand to pop this. CNC is now Illusionist.
You can reveal. Like cards with that name are Illusionist until end of turn.
You can kind of,
yes, but like it's when this thing attacks specifically, so it's like.
So you can't block it for the rest of your turn. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, well, it's not like they could defend and you could be like, "Ha, that's Illusionist. Get wrecked."
Yeah. You're preemptively calling it. Yeah. Anyway, that's too niche.
Yeah. I think it's I don't think it's. Well, we'll see if there's a new hero that comes out in the next set that like proves this thing to be really strong. But at the moment, unless there's like something specific that you really want to come in with that's not already Illusionist, I think it's kind of whatever. Tome of Ario.
Ayo.
I was about to say. Oh, sorry, I just wrote this wrong. Oh, I wrote Oreo. I was just hungry.
Tome of Oreo,
Tome of the Oreos. So Tome of the Oreos
white
here.
Filling here.
It's got the delicious white filling. So Tome of the Oreos. It's a blue 1 cost Illusionist action aura. Oh man, do I love action auras in blue. So it's a 2 block. Has Ward 1, which seems to be like a reoccurring trend with these Illusionist cards here that are coming up. I'm not totally sure what the point of this card is. It forces you to block, otherwise it's destroyed because of the ward to prevent the damage. The payoff is you draw a card next action phase. Like, I don't this has to be for a hero we don't have yet. Like I do not know what, like, or illusionists are what, Dromai, like Dromai is not using this card. Prism Bliss is not using this card. Like I don't know what this card is for.
Also drawn by Mark Poole. He does all the art, the kind of naturey stuff.
I really do like his art. His art is fantastic. I don't know what the card is used for.
Yeah.
Like I
nice,
just don't.
But yeah.
Yeah, so last card I'm going to talk about here is Blessing of Spirits. So another Blessing, 1 for 3 in red, blocks 2, creates 3 Spectrals at the start of turn. It has ward 1. So it's a good Spectral Shield generation for a 1 cost. You know, the key will be how hard it is to keep it alive through ward. Because, like, if they break it, you buy it, essentially.
Yeah.
Because it just is like, well, you get
really
no Spectral
does force you to block here, right? So it's rough. I don't know.
It does, yeah, and it's like Prismatic Shield. It doesn't block, but it's a 0 for 3 at instant for 3. So it's like the rate is better. So it's 1 for 3 Spectrals instead of a 3 for 3.
Yeah.
Spectrals, because that's Prismatic cost 3, and it does block. So like the rate is really good if you can keep it alive. It really just depends on how hard it is to keep it alive.
Yeah.
And I'll talk very briefly about 2 other cards here that.
Sure.
You know, make a little bit of sense to talk about. Wave of Reality is the new Illusionist equipment for arms. Dreamweavers was the other one, which is not as useful without Phantasm popping.
Yeah.
When it's destroyed, when Wave is destroyed, create a Spectral Shield token. This card also has Ward 1, which is like, so you start the game and this thing could be gone turn 0, which is kind of funny.
I didn't even think about that yet.
But when it's destroyed, you get a Spectral. So essentially, this thing starts you with a Spectral Shield.
Right.
I think that's not bad because essentially you're getting Ward 1. So you're getting 2 block out of it, right? Because you're getting a ward 1, which prevents 1 damage, and you get a Spectral Shield, which prevents another damage. So you're getting 2 life out of it.
You can turn 1 Soraya, maybe. This pops on turn 0. Your turn, play Soraya. There you go.
I just think of a 2 prevention armor, which is good. It's a good piece of armor.
It's true. And alternate effects with the Spectral Shield that you can use synergistically, right? So, yeah.
Use Soraya, attack with it if you're Prism. I think it's good. I think it's a good arm piece. I think it'll definitely be used on top instead of Dreamweavers, in my opinion. The other one is Celestial Kimono. So this one's another ward 1, as I said, would be a thing. It doesn't block, but it has ward 1. So it's technically like a 1 block, but it's like 1 prevention. Once per turn, when Celestial Kimono or another non-token permanent, so like Blessing of Spirits, for instance, permanent you control with ward is destroyed, gain 1 energy. So at worst, this thing gets popped right away on like turn 1 or whatever, right? And you can, which is sad, but you gain the energy on their turn, I guess, which is funny if they kill it on their own turn. But it's interesting, but it's just like you're creating this kind of like ward economy here that once per turn, if something was like, oh, you can destroy my thing with ward, but I'm gonna get a pitch, and if you have instance, I guess, and you're giving them pitch, it's good. I don't think you have that many instants,
right?
Unless you're on like an Illusionist 4-cost aura, which would be fine for Prism. But on your own turn, when it pops, it is also destroyed, so it kind of recurs itself. So like when Blessing of Spirit is destroyed, and it creates three Spectrals, you essentially get your mana back, right? So it turns it into a 0 for 3 if you can keep them alive, right? So it definitely I can see it. I can see the cogs going. Like I can see how this deck could be built. I just don't think I personally know how to crack it yet. I think it might need a little bit more help. I think the set was obviously designed without knowing Prism was LL'd yet. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be like for Soraya is a light illusions card, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see the next set maybe, or whatever it can do with this set, how it can impact the meta.
Hoping for a new light dark set soon.
Possibly.
Okay.
Generics. We're on generic / everything else, which is the spirit of
etc.
I'm gonna save that for last. I'm gonna do the royal cards first. So Imperial Ledger and Imperial Edict are the ones that were spoiled here. So Imperial Ledger is the red generic 0 cost that has no go again. Shovel into your deck, create a copper or a gold if you're royal. I don't know if there's anything that you can do with golds at the moment.
You can pitch it for 2 and draw a card. That's what you do.
Or like knick-knack bric-a-brac. Like I don't, because like I looked it up and I literally just typed in gold, and all I got was Dust of the Golden Plains, Imperial Ledger, Gallantry Gold, Cash In, That's what you do with it, right? You use
Yeah.
cash in.
It
You
trashes
only
a
need the
single
one
gold,
gold.
right? To draw two, is that
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
one gold to draw two because it replaces one gold replaces cost.
Not
So like
awful.
the cash in essentially will draw you two cards for a cost. It's a plus one card ability off the one gold, which is like and Knick Knack Brick a Brack, but we're
Right.
not talking about that right now, right? So you can shuffle into the deck, create a gold. So you're using two cards to draw two cards. Is that right?
That's
Like you got to play this card, put it back in your deck, and then play cash in, and then get two cards
yeah.
with
I
the
mean, you can
gold.
always save the gold for another turn too, right? You don't have to get rid of it right away.
Yeah, I think there needs to be like more uses for gold before I see this as being super useful.
Yeah.
Imperial Edict. That's a one cost generic item. Destroy name a card, right? So you could destroy it, and they can't play it. Oh man, sorry, I'm reading this completely wrong here. So Imperial Edict is destroy it
Yeah.
as an action. Name a card. It has go again, which is nice. Name a card. The name card can't be played until the start of your next turn. If you're a royal, instead the opponent reveals their hand, and then you get to name a card.
Mm.
And then Imperial Edict has go again. It is a one cost, so you are going to have to pay for it. However, this is just a better Chains of Eminence, right? Because as a royal, you can see exactly what they have
Yeah.
and essentially block their entire turn from working. Can you imagine you like reveal and you see Artivore and a bunch of like random blues and Phi, and you're just like, oh, I'll just take that. I'll just declare Artivore, and then you're just like, all right, I guess I'll blue attack, Ember Blade, blue attack,
Yep.
and then you get like a full turn to just take it and set up and put a bunch of pressure
It's
and
quite
make them
nice.
like. It's nice. It doesn't block obviously because it's an item, but I see this as probably the best Imperial card of the set.
Mm-hmm.
You could stop like a channel turn, like a channel Malheroic turn,
Mm.
or any turn that just has like a high ceiling. But I
Yeah.
really only see this good for royals. I don't
Or
see
if
this good as like, the random.
Yeah, and oftentimes
It
Bravo likes to take a lot of damage to set up for a big turn, like a crippling crush. Just play
it's like a
this,
boom crippling
no
crush.
crippling.
Be like
Yeah,
get smugged on, you
yeah,
know. So it's okay. Again, I think the royal cards are like super hit and miss. Maybe you run in an emperor, like in the emperor himself. I'm not really sure.
yeah.
Everything else. Last card that I'm going to be talking about here, Spirit of Irina. I think
Mm.
when I looked at this card, I'm like, really a Bolton legendary item? Why? Like
Oh
just
yeah.
why? You know,
Oh
that's what I thought.
yeah.
So it's a very interesting card when you read more into it. So it's a legendary yellow zero cost. But were
Sure.
put into Soul instead, put into the arena. So it essentially just means you can fulfill your charge keyword. So it's like if you've charged, you do this instead of this, or any of those kinds of cards are fulfilled by this. It just doesn't have, you don't have to use this in Soul. And you can play Lumina as an instant, which is like the main point of the card, right? So let's look at like just the counter straight up. It's countered by Arc Smash, Kyloria, Warhorn, Smashing Good Time. There's not that many cards that actually like are able to affect this particular item. Like these are the ones that target items, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the cards that directly target items. I think this is, funnily enough, I think this card is good. It just everyone just runs Smashing Good Time or something. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so if it's too strong, I think that's a thing. I think Lumina being an instant does a couple things, right? So the major ones are that you gain an action point, since the go again will resolve the action point, and you won't have to spend one to play it. So you don't need to spend
Right.
one to play the Lumina, right?
Yeah.
So it's an instant, but it has go again. So you can attack with a saber without having to remove soul for go again. Like you get an automatic action point to do that, or you can like, I guess there are other applications, but that's like the easiest one that you can go off earlier. So it means you can go off sooner because you don't need to bank as much soul to like swing a whole lot with your sabers. I'm talking about saber. I'm not really talking about the axes at the moment. I'm just talking about the sabers. The second big impact is you can use it with V of the Vanguard, right? So now because before using Lumina after a V would close the chain,
Right. That's
because
true.
it was a non-attack action, close
Yeah.
the chain after you use V. So now what you can do is that you can use it with V of the Vanguard because using it after the V doesn't close the chain. So the +1 or higher buffs from the V will affect the sabers, where before it didn't. It just buffed itself for V, and then the sabers were just the sabers with the buff from Lumina, right? But as instant, Lumina doesn't break the chain, so you can use V off like on the high end. You use V of the Vanguard off a Tunic counter. You charge with 2 cards, and then play 2 Luminas, right? So 1 Lumina from hand and 1 Lumina from arsenal, for instance. On the high end, and then your V of the Vanguard will give +2 to the sabers for Lumina. Sorry, +2 from the sabers, and the Lumina gives another +2 because you're playing two of them, right? So you're looping in sabers for 6 that are 7 if defended with attack action, since you charge. 7 if defended with attack action just by itself, based off saber. And then if you charge with Bolton, which you did because of Via the Vanguard, it gets another +1 if they defended with the attack action, right? So it has 8 power when defending with an attack action and 6
7 or 8.
base.
Yeah.
2 Luminas lets you attack 3 times with each saber. Because each Lumina allows all weapons to attack one more time. So Lumina,
like 42 damage,
sabers.
base 7.
So that means it minimum off no attack action blocks, you come in for 36. And if you're on Crucible, Courage of Bladehold, all of those are free, right?
Right.
So you're coming in for 36 base. And you could do it pretty quickly because this thing is searchable off beacon, so you could tutor it. It allows you to not need an additional action because of the action points you're going to gain off of both of the Luminas, because both of those Luminas will be played as an instant, right? So you're going to gain two extra action points.
Right.
So the main point of this card is you don't have to sit there, wait forever, wait for like 5+ charge cards, take a whole bunch of life, and just get disrupted and die, right? This thing will let you go off way faster. How fast? That will be up to the Bolton players to decide, right? But
yeah,
I think this is definitely, it makes sense why it's a legendary and like a one of. I think it'd be kind of disgusting if it weren't. I think this deck still gets countered by the same things.
Yeah, it's like a win more almost, or a win earlier card maybe, which actually matters a lot, but
it does.
It doesn't change the deck too much.
It doesn't. I think Channel Lake Fridges still cucks this deck extremely well. Disruption's still very good against the deck. Ice in general is just like very, very good into Bolton.
Yeah.
But I don't think it really changes his strength weaknesses. He just gets to go off faster, so I think it gives him more agency into like a lot
the
of
aggressive decks, probably.
The aggressive decks where like, okay, well, now you don't have to take like that one extra turn of damage to get that last setup. I can just go off now and then do a bunch of damage. And if they're at low enough health because they've taken some of your like random charge abilities earlier on, then it's pretty reasonable to say that you can do enough damage to win the game.
Yeah.
So I think this card will obviously see play. I don't know if it's gonna like jump Bolton into tier 1, but I think it'll definitely improve him from like maybe a tier 3 to like a tier 2 deck.
Yeah.
Maybe a tier 1.5 deck. I don't know if it'll be a meta deck. It really depends on what the meta is. I think if Ice is just chilling, Ultimate Icelander are there. I don't think Bolton will be as heavily played, but I do not know because I am not a Bolton player. This is just like an objective look at how good the card is.
Okay.
That is it. Holy Jesus. That was 3 hours between two videos. Yeah, it was 3 hours between two videos. So I hope everyone enjoyed this content. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And with that, from wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.